So while the discussion of all the korbanot is extremely fascinating, there's one korban in specific that stands out in this week's parsha, and that's the korban Ola V'Yored. Right, as opposed to every other korban mentioned in Parshat Vayikra, which is formulaic. If I commit sin X, I have to bring korban Y, irrespective of what kind of person I am. When it comes to the korban Ola V'Yored, as the name implies, it is Ola V'Yored. It goes up and it goes down. The kind of offering I have to bring fluctuates depending on what kind of person I am. Now, this term, Ola V'Yored, isn't found explicitly in the Parsha, but it's a term that was instituted later on by Chazal. But this idea is spelled out pretty clearly if we look in the opening psukim of Perek Hay in Parshat Vayikra, where the Torah lays out three different stages, three different levels, three possible korbanot I have to bring if I do something that deserves a korban Ola V'Yored, depending on what kind of person I am. Right? If I'm extremely wealthy and I commit a sin that deserves a korban Ola V'Yored, then the korban I have to bring is a female goat or a female sheep. That's the highest level. If I'm not as wealthy, I'm middle class, and I commit one of these sins that warrants a korban Ola V'Yored, then I have to bring two birds, either two torim, two turtle doves, or two b'nei onah, two pigeons, and that's my korban. And if have next to no money, and I commit one of these sins that deserves a korban Ola V'Yored, then I have to bring a tenth of an ephah, or an ephah is a measurement, so a tenth of an ephah of sola, of fine flour. And it's this range, ranging from a whole animal to a little bit of flour, that depends on my status, my financial status. That determines what kind of korban I bring. But the korban Ola V'Yored, like we mentioned, isn't brought for every single sin, but there are only specific sins that warrant a korban Ola V'Yored. In fact, there are only three sins that are singled out in this week's parsha that get a korban Ola V'Yored. And if we want to understand what this korban is really about, then we have to understand the nature and the essence of the sins that are attached to it. So what are these three sins that warrant a korban Ola V'Yored? Let's go through them. The first is Shvuat HaEdut. Shvuat HaEdut is essentially, if I witness a crime, and then the person who I witnessed committing that crime is being tried in Beis Din, in court, and the court comes to me and they say, did you witness this crime? And I say no, and they say, swear, take an oath, take a shvuah that you didn't witness this crime. And I take that shvuah, I swear I never witnessed the crime, even though I did witness the crime. So for that violation, I have to bring a korban Ola V'Yored. That's number one, Shvuat HaEdut. Number two is Tumat HaKodashim, that if I become tameh, I become ritually impure, either because I touched a corpse or I touched something else that makes me tameh. And in that state of tumah, I ate kodshim, I ate sacrificial meat, or in that state of tumah, I enter the Beis HaMikdash. So that's the second thing that warrants a korban Ola V'Yored. And the third, in addition to Shvuat HaEdut and Tumat HaKodashim, is Shvuat Bitoy. When I take an oath that I have or have not done something in the past, or I will or will not do something in the future. Right? The classic case that's given in the Mishnah and in the Gemara is if I swear I'm not going to eat in the next couple of days, or I'm not going to sleep in the next couple of days, and then I violate that oath by eating and sleeping in the next couple of days. So for that prohibition, I also have to bring a korban Ola V'Yored. Right, so we have these three sins that are singled out in the parsha, but they seem to be random. What do, number one, me swearing that I didn't witness a crime, even though I did witness the crime? Number two, me entering the Beis HaMikdash even while impure. And number three, me violating my oath to not do something in the future. What do these three things have in common, and why do they warrant a korban Ola V'Yored? So I heard an incredible explanation from Rav Asaf Ben Narsh, who essentially explained that what do these three sins have in common? All these three sins, the thing that you do when you violate them, the action itself is not inherently problematic. What do I mean? It's not inherently problematic for me to take an oath saying that I didn't witness a crime. And it's not inherently problematic for me to enter the Beis HaMikdash. And it's not inherently problematic for me to eat in the next couple of days or sleep in the next couple of days. It's not problematic if I was someone else. But because I'm not someone else, but because I'm in the position that I find myself in, a specific and precise position that's unique to myself, then it becomes problematic. Right? If I were someone else who hadn't witnessed a crime, it would not have been problematic for me to take an oath that I never saw the crime. Then that oath would be true. But because I'm not someone else, because I'm me, and I have witnessed that crime, that's when taking the oath becomes problematic. And if I was someone else who wasn't tameh, who wasn't impure, then it would not be problematic for me to enter the Beis HaMikdash or to eat kodshim. But because I'm not someone else, because I'm me, because of the position I find myself in, then it does become problematic for me to enter the Beis HaMikdash and for me to eat kodshim. And if I was not myself, if I was someone else, and I hadn't taken an oath that prohibited me from eating or sleeping in the next couple of days, then eating and sleeping is not inherently problematic. But because I'm not someone else, because I'm myself, then it does become problematic. And therefore it is a problem if I eat or sleep in the next couple of days because of the unique position I find myself in. Essentially, Rav Ben Narsh explained that all of these three sins are demonstrations of the fact that you're ignoring the specific and unique position that you're in, and you're pretending like you're someone else, and you're ignoring and kind of hiding from the fact that you are you, and you're in the position that you find yourself in right now. And that's why Rav Benesh explained what's the quote-unquote punishment for violating these sins. You have to bring a korban ola v'yored, because korban ola v'yored is unique in the sense that your status determines what kind of offering you have to bring. And essentially it's a reminder to the person who sinned to recognize that he can't just pretend he's someone else. He can't ignore whatever position he finds himself in life. But if you're in a certain position and you're in a certain scenario and you have certain skills, you have to recognize that and recognize your status and live not hiding from that fact, but acknowledging the fact and live because of that fact. And that's why you have to bring a korban that reflects your personal status in life, because your personal status is the way that you're going to be punished, and your personal status is the way that you're supposed to live. And this super important message isn't just the theme of korban ola v'yored, but it's also the theme of Purim. Right? Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, in incredible article, explains that the Megillah isn't called Megillat HaYehudim. It's not the story of the Jews. Yes, a big part of Purim is recognizing the salvation of the Jews, but what's the Megillah called? Megillat Esther. Right? It's the story of Esther. And it's a story not just about the situation of the Jews as a whole, but the specific transformation of the one person who is Esther Hamalka. And Rav Aaron explains that Esther's transformation went from her being this extremely passive person who did nothing and kind of like hid from the fact that her people were in danger, to becoming this active person who stood up and believed in the things that she knew were right. But what changed in the middle? What changed in the middle was Mordechai came to Esther and critiqued her. And we have to notice what Mordechai critiqued Esther about. Mordechai says to Esther, Ki im hacharesh tacharishi be'et hazot. If you're silent and don't do anything for Am Yisrael, Revach v'hatzalah ya'amod la'Yehudim mimakom acher, then the Jews are going to be saved. Mordechai does not critique Esther for not being willing to save the Jews, because Mordechai says the Jews are going to be saved regardless. That's not why I'm critiquing you. Why does Mordechai critique Esther? Umi yodea im le'et kazot higat lamachut. Because maybe, just maybe, the reason why you were put in this position of being queen was in order to save the Jews. And by you not acting upon that, you were shirking from your responsibility. You were running away from your position. You're pretending like you're someone else instead of acknowledging who you are. That was why Mordechai was critiquing Esther. Because if you ignore the position that you're in life, if you ignore the person that you are, that is a moral and ethical sin. It isn't just a bad thing. It is unethical. That's the lesson of Mordechai. That's the lesson of Esther. That's the lesson of korban ola v'yored. And we have to keep this in mind, whether we find ourselves in a certain position because God put us in that position, it's beyond our control, or even if we chose to put ourselves in a certain position and then we end up regretting it afterwards. If we're in a certain position, we pretend like we're not in that position, we are doing something wrong. When we lead our lives, we want to make sure we don't end up in a situation where we have to bring a korban ola v'yored, but instead we make the right decisions and we go through the transformation of Esther by recognizing our position and acting on it. And that's how we're going to actualize on the people we're supposed to be, who God wanted us to be. Mir Hashem, we should take this lesson to heart. Everyone have a great Shabbos and a Purim Sameach. Bye bye.